Thank you. Okay, we'll wait for a couple of people to come in and sit down. Thank you for joining us. So we are talking today, as I said, about the experiential boom, and we've got Christine here from Shubes and Justin from Epidemic Sounds. Before we dive in about all things experiences, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and where you come from? Justine.
Me first.
Off you go.
All right. Wow, that is so loud. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Osazuwa. I'm Chief Strategy Officer for a Y Combinator startup based here in the UK called Shubes. We do event marketing and event ticketing for events focused specifically on Black music and culture, as well as other POC events, essentially. I handle artist relations, partnerships, special projects, experiential marketing, all kinds of things in those spaces, basically. Good to see everybody.
Amazing. And Justin, go for it.
Hi. Okay. Again, I'll do the oopsie daisy here. Hi, I'm Justin. I'm from the U.S. originally, but working now at Epidemic Sound, which is a Swedish soundtrack partner for brands and content creators. We have a whole library of over 40,000 tracks, over 90,000 sound effects, and essentially we pair this offering with various businesses and enterprise companies in order to soundtrack at scale, i.e. use music, all rights included, across all platforms at scale to grow your business and obviously convey your story and the value propositions that you want to get across, generally speaking. I started about a year ago, bounced around in the Nordics for quite a while. I'm from Texas, so it's really, really hard to transition from there to the Nordics, but I'm making it work. Yes.
Yeah.
I will add, I also lived in Stockholm for 2 years.
Well, there you go.
I'm from Baltimore. The weather was not that bad, but also a very different transition.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, a very international panel then we've got today. I love it. So to kick off about experiential, I think people call it many different things, events, experiential events, just experiences. But to you, what is your definition of experiential and why are these experiences so important for younger people?
Yeah, I think experiential is thrown around a lot to just mean kind of like anytime you go anywhere now, which I think is unfortunate because when you do experiential marketing right, it's really special. And when I think about experiential marketing or like experiences as a whole, there's a level of immersion that I think needs to happen for it to really be an experiential event, basically. What I mean by that is if you go to the pub and you watch a band on stage, that is not a experiential experience. Yes, it's cool, it's great. I love going to a pub and seeing a band on stage. But when you integrate the food, the music, who's going to be there, the theming, the decor, everything into it, that's when it becomes something more and bigger, and that's what I think makes it more special than just, we've put something in a room and we want you to go look at it, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's evolved from just a place where information is shared and a company or brand is trying to convey value prop A, B, or C to your point, Christine. It's more of an experience, but I think on another level, it's all about the feeling. So people kind of go into a certain place and want to expect or take away some type of actual feeling, and especially nowadays when we're all kind of bombarded with various facts and stimuli from all different touch points. They want to actually ultimately feel something. So when the customer or potential customer leaves, they can take away that, obviously, hopefully buy the product or something to that effect. And as it relates to music specifically, we do a creator economy report where we survey thousands of content creators and brands, and 85% of them have described that music is an essential part to actually eliciting the feeling that they want. And then 84% of them actually say that they pick music as a key driver for it. So the reason I think I'm here, at least the hat that I can best put on, is how music can play a key part of that. And I think we're all hopefully tapped into that on some level, just as human beings.
And I would add to that, I work in music and have as well, so I completely agree. And I also think a really big component is community. And another reason why I say just going to the pub and seeing a band is not quite the same is because some people are playing darts, some people are playing pool, some people are just buying drinks, some people are outside smoking a cigarette. There's a very different scenario or situation when everyone is kind of collectively sharing in an experience, and I think that's a really big component when you're talking about real, an actual experiential event, basically.
Yes, certainly. And with music, everyone is there for the music, and that's what's bringing the people together. Amazing. And I keep mentioning this, and I feel like it's banned these days, but the pandemic. It happened. We were obviously deprived of these experiences, especially Gen Z. It was kind of their prime. And they really missed out. But now, how have you seen the experiential space evolve in the last year or two, post-pandemic? Has it got more creative? Are you seeing new experiences pop up?
Yeah, I mean, it's gone from like two extremes, and every country was different in how they dealt with it. But for most countries, it was like everything is online. So we're going to have concerts, we're going to have get-togethers, and looking back in hindsight, of course, it's somewhat depressing to think about, but it was also inspiring in a way because it shows the power of people just needing to connect to other people. And then when the extreme kind of left, so to speak, I think it created a new world in a way where there still now needs to be quite a bridge between the offline and the online. So we can't now go, for example, fully. I mean, there are events and experiences that you can only experience in real life, but there's such a heavy digital component to it now that I think the standards, certainly it's more expensive, but the standards are certainly much higher to kind of live and breathe that experience before, during, and after it happens.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add the prevalence of online events during COVID, I think, also led people to understand issues around accessibility and how to cater to those that may have disabilities that need to be addressed. So I think there's a lot more awareness of, we're going to have an in-person event, but it's going to be hybrid, or we're going to have an in-person event, but we're going to have special precautions in place or things like that. I'm hoping those things stay because I think it's really important to be able to cater to different audiences. And then in addition to that, we've also seen an intense rise in the amount of events that exist. People are spoiled for choice, which actually makes it really quite challenging to stand out. And so when I talk about you have to do more because there's so much competition now when it comes to events, I think you just have to do more because people expect more. And if people are going to go through the trouble of leaving their house, spending the money in a financial crisis, and also risking COVID, that's very much still real, you have to be giving them something that warrants leaving your house basically and spending 50, 60, 75, 150 pounds for a festival, for example.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned it there. Although we were deprived of those experiences, the pandemic was kind of the birth of hybrid. And it is something that has lived on. And we're now doing events and making sure they are accessible by having them online and in person. Christine, so how are you using experiential events at Shoobs to build a community?
Yeah. So what's interesting about Shibs is we're a marketplace, basically. We have about 8,000 events on platform every year. So they're not our events, but we sell the tickets for the events, and we help with marketing of the events. And we get to pinpoint really interesting things that are on platform that I think are very unique to our platform. Because our platform focuses specifically on people of color, all of our events kind of have that as a lens. So some of my favorite events I've seen on platform is there is an event organizer that hosts anime nights. And over the summer, they hosted an anime gathering that was on a boat. So it was a boat party on a on the Thames boat party, and everyone wore their cosplay and their they played games and things like that. I think it's a really cute way to bring people together, but something that's again unique, right? It's about community. It's something unique, something you can't just get everywhere else. And we love seeing things like that on platform. We've seen people do themed events around certain albums that have been released. We had one person, one organizer, do a themed event around 50 Cent's first album, and it was all food and themed, etc., all around this. For example, people get very, very creative, and that's the stuff that we really love to see. And then of course we have really great festivals on platform as well. That's the start of festival season at the moment, so lots of things are bouncing up. And I actually just released a article around the ubiquity of hip hop as a genre, and the relevance to what I'm saying is another really cool thing we're seeing is a blending of genres. So lots of different genres are included across festivals in a way that I think didn't exist. Actually, looking at my own data, it literally didn't exist nearly as much before COVID. And I think people had a lot of space to discover new music, discover new artists during the pandemic. And with that, we've seen a change in how genres and then thus how events are kind of structured now, which I think has been really interesting.
And on that, do you have any festivals lined up for the summer? Where are you going to be?
I'm going to Afro Nation in Portugal, which I'm very excited about, which is a 3-day party on the beach, basically. Which, there's some perks to, working in music sometimes, I swear.
Amazing. Well, very jealous. That is better than a UK festival for sure. And Justin, Epidemic Sounds recently ran a Sound for Every Feeling campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. This in many ways ties in with what Christine was talking about in terms of really showing in this case, diversity of feeling. As again, that's kind of the operative word for what we try to tap into with music. And A Sound for Every Feeling was a campaign that essentially aimed to highlight the infinite number of feelings that people can have, because as they relate to content creators, ultimately that's what said brand or content creator wants to convey through music. So we had quite a massive, including out-of-home campaign that tapped into it, and then further drilled down into our overall brand platform, which is Feel It, Find It. And again, there are emotions that people have that you can search in a music search engine like Epic, or give me music that's romantic. And there are things that are clearly going to show up, or playlists or songs that everybody can kind of understand. But the world is a big place, and even culturally, there are words that don't exist in English that encapsulate certain feelings. And you'd be surprised how often certain brands or content creators actually want to convey something like that. And so the Sound for Every Feeling was meant to kind of show the breadth of all those types of feelings. And then, of course, we attached certain playlists to those feelings, and we strategically placed ads out of home and digital in certain locations tied to certain feelings that were a bit cheeky and funny in some cases, and some of them were quite emotional. So it was really our effort to express that through music, and particularly, of course, through Epidemic Sound and the thousands and thousands of tracks and artists that we have, that you can find that kind of feeling to then match your piece of content to then convey your customer to do ultimately what you hope they do.
You mentioned there that you made sure there was out-of-home campaigns
Yeah.
and there was digital. Is that a conscious decision with all your campaigns? Right, what can we do online? What can we do out of home?
Yes, I think out of home gets a bad rap in many industries, because especially when you run it up the ladder to the C-suite, it's like, why am I going to pay that much money to put a billboard here when I can do 100x times in targeted digital ads? And there's a certain element of truth to that, but there's also an element in showing up in real life, not on just somebody's phone. So what we did is we spent weeks going through various Google Maps street views to find exact neighborhoods and locations where we believe that content creators work, live, play, a lot of it in this area, coincidentally. But also we did Los Angeles and New York, so we picked 3 cities. Again, also to not try to boil the ocean, as they say, and that's another mistake that I think a lot of brands try to make, is they want to be everywhere all at once for everyone, and we have a very specific audience. So we did very unique out-of-home placements in very specific neighborhoods. There's a QR code, which, to be honest, was just kind of a byproduct of the campaign. It was meant to actually just get our brand awareness out there in the relevant areas, and we saw quite good results from it, considering how hyper-targeted it was. But we are a very somewhat of a, in these neighborhoods and these areas specifically, kind of niche, so you can actually be pretty effective in that sense.
I wanted to add to out of home, because I think I agree, people don't talk about out of home nearly as much, because obviously digital marketing is kind of the go-to ubiquity. But I got my start working in music, working in street teams. And there is a lot to be said about that as a concept. For those that aren't well-versed in street teams, essentially you collate fans together and have them help you do things. Back in the day, I helped, we would get all the fans to call the radio station and say, hey, play our song. We would send them all stickers and tell them to pass them out at the local pub or the local club or whatever it might be. They would put up posters, things like that, basically. And there is so much, again, I always go back to community, because fandom and community go hand in hand. It's an area I love. But there's so much that can be done offline that feels like, at this day and age, it feels even more special, because so many people are digital that you're competing with everyone's attention digitally. But when you're the only, you're only person with the posters up, or you're the only person in certain neighborhoods and things like that, you're gonna get way more attention, because you're not competing with everybody in those scenarios.
And we did, sorry, just to add, I know we don't have a ton of time, but it just reminded me of something, that we also took that kind of thinking digitally. So we bought very specific Uber ads placements from certain periods of time, like, you know, in the evening or in the morning during certain conference periods periods to target exact audiences. So there are ways that you can also dip your toe into, you know, the billions of impressions that you could buy from wherever in order to actually target the people that you want to target.
That's it. I think being hyper
I have to mention digital because out of home is, yeah, we're still repping digital, so.
We want to shout about out of home too. It's still around. Amazing. And I think what all the marketers we've got here today really want to know from you guys is, what are the key ingredients for success when you're doing an experiential campaign? They're big, they're costly, they can be risky. So what are the key ingredients for a successful one, and what metrics are you guys looking at post-campaign to show whether it worked?
I go first. I guess, first of all, metrics for us is fairly easy on the bright side because we sell concert tickets. So ideally, people have purchased them, which is really key for us. But also, I think something that is lost on people a bit more is we want people to actually show up. I know it seems obvious that people buy a ticket and they show up, but actually that's not always the case. Things happen, people get busy, et cetera, et cetera. And the way the live entertainment space is structured is, yes, whoever the promoter, the artist make money on the sales of the tickets, but there's additional revenue that comes from the drinks and the food and the merch and all this other stuff. So you have to continue marketing even though people have already purchased a ticket because you need them to actually come. So that's a big metric for us that is like a two-part that I think people forget about, that second part. And then in terms of like the key ingredients, I guess, into it, I believe it's getting the buy-in from the right people. And what I mean by the right people, so if I go back to an example like the anime boat party, you have to make sure that the people that are really, really into anime actually want to come to that event. So you have to make sure it's an authentic experience. If it's only like the biggest, most popular anime and nothing else, they're probably gonna be like, oh, let's not, I'm good, I don't need to go to that, you know? And so it's making sure you know who your audience is, know what they actually like, and then make sure you're actually catering that experience to them because you're offering them what they're looking for, and they're much more likely to buy a ticket, much more likely to show up, and much more likely to have a good experience and want to come back again, which I would add the third metric is repeat buying, ideally, is really important to us as well. Yeah.
I mean, for us, it's obviously revenue at the end of the day is the success for metrics, but I think specifically when you're looking at brand marketing or trying to grow a brand or your business from an awareness or upper funnel perspective, for us, it was very much about authenticity and personality. So it's not necessarily always about the scale and how prevalent you are in every neighborhood all the time. It's being in the right place at the right time and then also having the right message. And again, I think that gets lost a bit because people tend to look at quantity over quality still. And really the gauge for success for us for this particular campaign was, I guess one of the primary gauges was index search, brand search queries. So we're able to see actually an uptick. I think in London, specifically in these areas, it was something like 15 or 16% uptick from before we ran the campaign to after. And this was only a 6-week flight period, which is not that long, and it's investment-wise, it wasn't as if it was like hundreds of millions of pounds, but it was enough to show a significant uptick in our core audience. So to us, it was a good win for sure.
Certainly is. Certainly is. At YMS, we are all about Gen Z, as you know. From your point of view, what do you think this generation are looking for when it comes to experiences? You mentioned some of them there: authenticity, inclusivity. But is there anything else, any specifics that you're like, this for Gen Z is the most important?
Diversity. I think Gen Z especially is probably pretty sick of seeing the same people, hearing the same things consistently. It's the most diverse audience that's ever existed, meaning from a race and ethnicity standpoint, from a LGBTQ standpoint, like it's a incredibly, like geographically, everyone's moving around much more than before. And I think people have an expectation that when they go to events, or they go to experiences, they're going to see representation of themselves, they're going to see representation of their friends, of their family, of people they look up to and aspire to. And I think events that miss that mark are gonna have a really tough time moving forward, essentially.
Yeah, 100% agree. Authenticity, diversity, and even from a business perspective, if I can try to frame this in the right way, there has to be an ability to use, specifically when you want to create an experiential event and use different content in that you can do it without necessarily all the legal hurdles that you follow. Because something that really kind of hinders, I think, perhaps this generation more than previous, are just all the nuances when it comes to AI, when it comes to rights, when it comes to X, Y, and Z. And again, kind of building that on the back of our offering as a company, that's super important for our customers. And that's super important, I think, for anybody who wants to start something from ground zero, is that you don't want to be hindered out of the gate with not being able to make your mark because you don't have, a ton of money to buy the rights that you need. So having that kind of legal protection is a very unattractive thing to be talking about here, but I can't think of another way to describe it. But having that kind of air cover that you can actually do what you want to do, and then of course having the other elements where you can appeal to who you want to appeal, to me, are, at least from our customer base, is clearly what they're looking for.
I will add to that because, yes, also agree, legal is a
Yeah.
big component of it, this is more so for if you're working with Gen Z versus if you're advertising or using them, thinking of them as a customer. But making it easy to work with influencers is a big thing that a lot of companies miss. And
Definitely,
you know what I mean? Like, what I mean by that is, like, you can't have them sending you invoices. I think we're good. All right. You can't have them like a net 90-day pay period and things like that. I worked at Label as well, and we did influencer marketing when I was at major labels. And like figuring out, we're like, okay, this person's getting paid on PayPal, this person's getting paid on Monzo, this person's getting paid on Venmo. Like, you just work it out, because if a song is out on Friday and you want the influencer to be making their little dance on Saturday, you need things to move much quicker than how huge, massive corporate structures tend to move. And I think that's a really big shift in dynamic that it's going to have to be figured out, because the companies that can move fast are the ones that are going to prevail over the ones that are moving at glacial speed to like come around to a trend like 3, 4, God forbid, like weeks later.
Yeah. People are super savvy nowadays. They know what they need to get from their partners, so agree.
Yeah, it's always a bit embarrassing when that company posts on TikTok, like 3 months after the
Barbie trends that
yeah,
came like literally
good.
a whole quarter afterwards. You're like, oh God.
Not good, not good. Our final question, and our biggest question of the session, I think. What is the future of Experiential? Where are we going? As you said, it's got bigger, it's got better since the pandemic. What are we looking at in the next couple of years?
I think the more unexpected, the better. So really mixing it up with different genres, different experience. I mean, you mentioned the anime one on a boat. I mean, that's like, throw a dart at a wall and say, let's pair this with this. And sometimes that's what people remember, and that's what they go home and talk to their family or friends about, or that's what they end up purchasing. So I think which makes our job a lot more difficult, because we have to be super different and interesting. So I just, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball, but I would say the less predictable that you can be, the better, which you can take that for what it's worth, because you can go into different directions with that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there's going to be a much more of an integration of what people care about. I think the lines are going to blur in the same way. I'm sure people have figured out, like, genres, for example, are blurring much more. Like, you tell me what genre Olivia Rodrigo is, things like that. And so I think that's going to be a component where you're going to see genres for music experience blur more, but also you're probably going to see a lot more events that mix what people care about. So thinking about bands like Bring Me the Horizon, they really have a huge push about sustainability, for example, and they're working actively to bring down the costs or the carbon, making their tours carbon neutral. Coldplay, Billie Eilish are doing similar things. I think people are going to care a lot more about that, and that's going to be a component when it comes to events. Same things like people that are very politically active. You're going to see like Olivia Rodrigo. I believe in one of her concerts, she gave out free condoms or free Plan B or something along those lines. While for her concert, for example, I think you're going to see a lot more of artists, influencers, people really standing up for what they believe in, and that's going to have a trickle-down effect to how events are run and what's going to be important from start to finish for the events.
Yeah, definitely. No one's no longer just a singer or a dancer, or they're kind of across the board, which I think, as you said, is going to make some really interesting events. Amazing. Thank you both so much for all your insights. Do we have time for questions? Yeah? Amazing. Any questions for Justin or Christine today? Yeah, we've got one at the front, just here. Just there.
Hello. Oh, it's really loud.
Surprising, right?
Hello.
I'm Tasha. I work at Scene Presents, which is actually a brand experience agency. And I'd love to know if you think there are any brands that have done best-in-class activations in the last 6 months.
That's a really difficult question. Please go if you have something to your mind. Otherwise, I'm going to sit here and...
Yeah, no, it's a very
Next
niche.
question.
Because I had a call with them recently, so this just might be a recency bias. But there is a nonprofit here in the UK called Music Declares Emergency. And their entire, they're talking about sustainability within the music industry. And so they are also doing, like I was talking about, like going out of home. They've set up booths at festivals and concerts all over the UK in order to get people to sign up to like this pledge basically around sustainability. This is something that was super common probably 15 years ago. And that stopped being common because I remember when I was younger, I would go to a concert and there'd be someone trying to get me to sign up to be a bone marrow donor, talking about like, you know, anti-drugs, anti-smoking, like all kinds of things. And like that went away and went very digital. Even like I remember PETA, for example, like, you know, the vegetarian, vegan, you know, all of those were like super prevalent and always around at concerts and festivals. And that stopped for a really long time. And so seeing someone like kind of like take it old school is really exciting. And I think it's like probably very novel to Gen Z to see like structures in place like that. So I think that's one thing that's really cool to watch.
I think a good example, and this is going to age me a bit, but whatever. Metallica, who I grew up with, when they take their traveling circus to different cities, there is like a slew of events that are built around it. And it basically turns that city into like, you know, for their audience, into like a mini kind of army of merch and pop-ups and bars and get-togethers. And I mean, granted, that's super expensive to coordinate and run, but I love the idea. And Taylor Swift, I think, does exactly the same thing too, although a lot of that is super organic. In Stockholm, the whole city was Taylor Swift. Whether or not that was planned or whether people jumped on it, I don't know. But the point being is that it kind of creates this community amongst a 1 million, 2 million person town that starts to feel like you're tapping into something cool or something super uncool. If it's Metallica, I'm sorry to say, I really like them, but whatever. And I think that's a genuine interaction that true fans can appreciate. And then of course the band sells more merch and product.
Amazing, thank you both. Any other questions from the audience? It's actually so difficult to see hands, so shout at me. No, I think we're all good. Well, thank you both so much. Incredibly insightful, and I'm so excited for all the events that are going to be coming up over the next couple of years. As you said, it's just going to get bigger and better. So definitely one to get involved in. Experiential is the new thing for 2024.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Both.